Because Punk was the one that you thought that was going to be the exception. You saw Stone Cold walk out, but he came back. You saw Hogan walk out, but he came back. You saw Brett walk out, but he came back. You
Yeah,
thought when Punk left, he's good, and I think he wanted to be the exception to a
he
certain
did.
extent.
I think if AEW wouldn't have soured, he wouldn't have come back. If he wouldn't have ruined that locker room for himself, he wouldn't have come back.
What's your take on? Do you think Punk was the problem, or do you think the locker room was the problem in AEW?
I mean, I think it's a combination thing. I think CM Punk is a button pusher, but I also think that all those guys are like, we're Mavericks and we do our thing our own way. So you get a bunch of guys with all the same attitude, and who's the big dick in the room? Now, should Jack Perry be getting in the face of a vet like that? No, no matter what, shouldn't happen in your locker room. Shouldn't happen. But the fact that he fought the goddamn owner, like the EVPs, like the Bucks and Omega, getting into a brawl with him and his guys, that shows you that he's, and then people have said that he's a real pain in the ass. No one,
There's
yeah.
journalists out there that have interviewed him and like have worked with him behind the scenes. They're like, he basically threatened my life. Like, I don't like this guy. So
Yeah.
like, there are people that love Phil Brooks that have either mended their relationship with him or liked him since the beginning. Like, I think him and
Right.
Kofi Kingston were like brothers from the beginning. Where like Miz and Seth Rollins and all those guys behind the scenes had to mend fences. But then there are a lot of guys, like AJ Styles was like, "Fuck this guy! I don't want this guy."
Oh, AJ hates him.
Because like those guys are tight with the AEW guys.
Big time. Big time. I think that the indies really hate Punk. But, I also think that, there was a moment where they thought that he could be their, messiah. Oh, we got him. And then I think they got a taste of, who he was, and it wasn't working.
Because that was the big, because you didn't think he was ever going to return, and then he debuts in AEW, and you think this is going to be the thing that puts AEW completely over, and we're going to have a WWE versus AEW.
100%.
AEW thought he was going to be the guy that was going to really change the game.
And yeah, I think that, and he did. I was there in Vegas when he won the belt. That pay-per-view fucking ruled. It was really fun. I mean, I was like, they're doing it. And then I was like, oh, damn, the literal, the injury stuff, I think, is what soured it. I think that plus him being hard to work with is what actually killed him. If he would have been healthy the whole time, I feel like all those dudes would have just stepped around him. They would have been like, fuck it. Our gates are amazing. We're getting ratings now. All of it would have been, but because he was on the shelf and being an asshole, it kind of made it where they were like, well, he's not actually doing anything for us.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was like, let me go. I don't want to be here anymore. And then Tony Khan was like, I want you to run Collision. Because at that time, they hadn't debuted Collision yet. They're like, we'll just put you guys on separate shows. He's like,
and it'll be fine. And of course, that's not going to work.
No.
And they actually paired him up with people he likes. I know that him and Samoa Joe were good buddies. And that last match was good.
Which is crazy because he quit before the match, and Samoa Joe came into doing the match. And then Joe
is a consummate professional.
Oh, for sure. And he's like, you know what? I'm here. Let's do it. It's Samoa Joe, which is like what Dean Ambrose was to Seth Rollins, kind of like his wrestling soulmate. He's like, do it. If this is my last match ever, this is my last match ever. And then they didn't accommodate his travel home. He had to figure it out on his own.
That's outrageous. That's a bad look for Tony.
That's crazy. And then now in WWE, he's like a saint. I don't know if he has like a behavioral clause in his contract or something, but everybody.
I think he just doesn't want to shit where he eats right now. I'm sure it might turn into something. I think he goes I think he got really mad at those AEW guys to the point where he's like, I'll be a sweetheart at this other company and help them soar so high. And he, that part of Punk that needs, drama and, fucking people over, the negativity side, it's all being fed by AEW being in a bad spot. Because everything he does that's good here makes them look bad. So he's living for that.
And then they showed the Jack Perry footage. Which even Punk commented on, saying he's like, that's just a bad look on them. Basically, everything I've ever said on podcasts about that situation was true, and the fight backed it up.
It backed it up. I mean, like 100%. Like, and here's the thing: Jack Perry's a young guy trying to make a name for himself, and like they're still making reference to it when he does stuff. I think that Jack Perry's a good wrestler. I think that, you know, you don't, even if a guy is an asshole to you in a locker room, you're still a fucking rookie. I don't care that you've been at the company longer than Punk. Punk's been wrestling for almost as long as you've been alive.
Yeah.
You can't, that's bad form, dude. And the fact that none of the other dudes in the locker room backed that idea up to him is crazy. Because, like, the Bucks and Omega, those guys they've been in the industry a long fucking time. They know how it works.
But even like Jericho, I feel like, who's known Phil Brooks for a long time, could step in and really like control both sides, because he's supposed to be a locker room leader and was.
He's supposed to be the locker room leader. He's supposed to be the one.
And Bryan Danielson too, like he was involved. Like he could have easily gotten involved, because I feel like he's like probably the best mediator that they could have.
Yeah, I mean, I think so, because I don't think that Punk and him are on bad terms.
No. I don't think Punk's like, it is like the former WWE guys that all kind of had Punk's back, even if they weren't in that era, like Cash Wheeler and the other guy. I forget, those guys are
Dax and Cash.
But they didn't cross paths in AEW. They're just friends outside of the business, and then they
so they but that's the thing. They moved Cash and Dax over to Collision with him.
Yeah.
When that was all going down, because they are buddies.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I think it's because those guys, when they came up as the Revival, they looked up to Punk. And I think Punk tried to like kind of bring them along when they were getting like beat down a little bit by the company. I think Punk was probably somebody who was like, hey guys, like, this shit happens. You can be the best guy. It doesn't always mean you're going to be the one who's getting the most work or get pushed the hardest. Because that's what happened to Punk when he was at WWE the first round.
Yeah.
You know?
Yep. Like he was I think he was supposed to face Triple H at WrestleMania 30, and he's like, fuck that, I've done that already. Been there, done that. Like, do it to do the main event of WrestleMania. And the way it's shaping up this year, I mean, anything could happen in the next 6 months. I don't know if him versus Seth Rollins main events night one, maybe it does. I don't know if he has a feud strong enough, unless they stretch out this McIntyre thing for another year, to main event.
Unless their idea is that they'd have to stretch it out. If they did, the three of them fighting would have to. I mean, I don't know how you can keep a program like that unless you put, essentially, you have to have him defeat one, that he goes away, then he feuds with the other one, then the other one comes back, and then it turns into a triple threat. Because that's what I would have. I almost thought they were going to give us a triple threat at SummerSlam, and I'm so happy they did it. And then Seth, I think, like, I wasn't super excited about him being the referee. That match was the one that scared me on the card, and then I loved it.
Yeah. Well, because it's a bloodbath feud that needed physicality, but at the same time, Punk is like made of glass at this point in his career, and you really got to save him. Because if he got hurt again, like let's say like he tore his tricep right off the bone again or something, like
that's it. That's it.
I think got really lucky this year in the last 6 months that he was able to keep that storyline going and they had him involved. But if he got hurt again and he's out for another 6 to 9 months, what are you going to do?
You have Drew McIntyre make a shirt that says "I retired Punk," and then you move on from it.
Yeah,
that's it. You push Drew and you go, sorry, that's the end. Like he really is an injury concern every time he goes into a match. So, but again, this one seemed like everything was fine. It was all clean. But again, if you think about that, when he won the belt in Vegas, that at the end of that, he was fine. And then the next day, they're like, he's not fine.
And it's interesting too, because he didn't really like. If you look back at his AEW run versus WWE now, like he looks like he's in the best shape of his life right now. When he was in AEW, you could tell he's still trying to gain that wrestling weight back. He was a little thin from like his UFC days.
Yeah, he was like he had ring rust too. Like his first few matches back were not super crisp. He looked better, and he's still and people will freak out when I say this. He's a shell of himself. Like he is not the CM Punk that everybody was chanting for. Like I'm worried for him when he sits cross-legged. Like I don't think he could do another pipe bomb. He has to do it in the ring because if he did it on the like at the ramp, it's gonna hurt him. Like he can't bend his knees that way anymore.
If you go back to I think it was the Royal Rumble, yeah, because that was his only other match that he had. In that match, he was starting to get boos towards the end. I'm like, this could be a Batista situation where they turn on him because in that match, he looked like he was just huffing and puffing. Like he did not have his stamina in check.
It's because, like, I don't think he was training that whole time. Like, I think he was trying to do that UFC stuff, but then when he realized that wasn't going to happen, and he moved fully over to the like broadcast booth for Fox, what he was doing for a while, I don't think he was like keeping up. I don't think that's something that was happening. And then, I mean, Rollins and McIntyre are two of the strongest people in the company. So just pairing him up with those guys, like McIntyre can make people look like he's killing them and be safe with them. Yeah. Like that's something he's been doing his whole career.